Okay, welcome back everyone. Today I have a beautiful, beautiful guest with me that I'm super excited about. Solara Amun Ra is a #1 best-selling author of Spiritual Seductress, the high-powered women's guide to devour the world through spiritual guidance. I love that title to start with. She's a pre-eminent spiritual advisor for female visionaries and thought leaders. And Solara has a priceless gift to rapidly unblock subconscious and energetic patterns. She's a Master Ascension Catalyst and spiritual DNA activator for profound fulfillment and radical 5D bliss living. Now that feels all like a bit of a mouthful. So welcome, Solara. I would love you to just, I guess, explain to us a little bit more about you and what you do, who you work with, just for everyone listening.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Well, first of all, I really appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm very excited to share this time with you and your listeners. So I am an elite spiritual advisor to female visionaries and leaders who are just wanting to get to the next level of success, but this time in a different way. They are wanting a lot more freedom, and they're actually redefining what success means to them. And so one of those key pieces is freedom, and the other one is really moving into their higher purpose iconic work. So not just doing what they're really good at, but truly what they came here to do in this lifetime.
I love that. I talk about that a lot with clients too. Often we think what we've been educated in or what we've studied or what we've got the most experience in is the path to follow. But it's really what you feel deeply called to do, right? That's where you get the most enjoyment, success, bliss, all of that.
It's a whole different way of living and running a business, actually, when you move into that, because especially the women that I work with, they have reached that level of success, but they've made a lot of sacrifices along the way, and they're not wanting to repeat that. And part of that, not repeating that, is yes, you can live without the sacrifices and having a lot more joy in the sense of playing with what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I know you've come from a very different background, excuse me, which we'll get into in 1 second. But, you know, a lot of the women, I think, that are listening and clients I work with too, have come from perhaps corporate backgrounds and, you know, start their own business for freedom, but then find themselves repeating patterns, right? From what they knew before. Very, very common. Very common. That overworking, that I think it's a real masculine energy, which we're going to talk about as well. But I'd love to know, so several years ago you had an accident which almost took your life, and I'd just love to know, that was something that was really profound in your journey that really changed your life and your direction. Could you just share with everyone a little bit about that and how it changed your life?
Yes. So that was back in 2008. I was an architect at the time. Living in New York City, and I thought I was living the life.
Yeah.
I was like very high achieving. So I went to an Ivy League school to get my master's. And then after that, I started working for these star architects, and all that looked really good on paper. But I felt like something was missing, and I didn't know what that was or how to name it. I was just kind of like in that process. Is like, is there more to this? You know, after working so hard and getting to that place where your resume is so good and the doors are open to work anywhere, really, that's what happened for me. And still feeling like there has to be something more to life than this, that kind of feeling. And I went through a divorce, which, even though I was the one that chose to leave the marriage, it really rocked my world. And I started questioning even more. And then I had this car accident, and I had a near-death experience. And what happened is I had a major spiritual awakening that when I physically was able to heal my body enough to go back to work, I remember sitting in front of the computer and thinking, this is pointless. What am I doing here? This doesn't make sense to me anymore. And so if I told this story, I was like, you know, someone made me choose architecture, you would kind of think, okay, that makes sense. But no, it was the other way, right? I chose that since I was 16. I knew I wanted to be an architect. But what happened is the spiritual awakening was so great, and I discovered what I call now the unseen world and the world of energy. That when I tried to continue to be an architect, it really didn't make sense to me anymore, because also part of that spiritual awakening, what happened, Susan, was that I discovered my true purpose here. I was shown my purpose, and it was not to be an architect, which was a big shock for me. After all the years put into it, the student loans, all of it. But that's how then it got me on the path. And I first started out doing spiritual healing, helping other women discover their purpose, find their soulmate, heal themselves, right, to just become more whole in a way that they became more powerful and more confident. And then I realized that with this process of helping women discover their purpose, especially women in corporate, if I didn't teach them how to actually make that into a business, they would never leave corporate. So I started to combine and moved out of spiritual healing more into spiritual coaching and helping women with this. And then it just kind of evolved. And as I continued to say yes, more of my purpose was revealed to me, which I think is a key piece actually for the listeners to hear, because I get this question a lot. What is my purpose? Well, it's not like your full purpose is revealed to you like on a grand platter and everything is shown to you, because the truth is if the fullness of your purpose was shown to you, you would fall on your back, because you'd be like, oh my God, I can't handle it, right? So only a piece of it is shown, and you say yes, the next piece is revealed. And so that's part of my mastery, and what I teach is how to surrender to the intuitive hits and the downloads that you get, and those intuitive nudges that are pointing you in a certain direction. And the more you say yes, the more is revealed. And in my case, it was revealed that I needed to change who I was working with, that I needed to be working with the visionaries and leaders that then had a ripple effect. So that's been how my career and the line of work that I do now has changed and evolved over the years, and how it actually stays very exciting.
Yes, I love that. I did a podcast episode on that a while ago about your whole purpose, and I spoke about the same thing, which I love, is that I feel, a lot of people feel like they have to find their purpose, like it's a magical thing that somehow it's all going to be revealed, and there it is in a neat little package, and that's what you do for the rest of your life. And the way I explained it was that your purpose is always unfolding, right? Your purpose is always unfolding, and it's an evolution. One thing leads to another, and I don't really believe necessarily that we ever get to a place where we feel like we're done, like we feel like that's it. It's just evolving, right? As we up level new things, we learn new skills, we just become more enlightened and expand. More and more and more and more and more comes into our world. And like you said, if the full vision of what it could potentially be was revealed to us, we probably would run a mile, right?
Yeah, we would run away. And I so agree with everything that you just said, and how you so eloquently described it, because you don't really arrive, right? Your purpose is a journey. And especially I find, since I work with entrepreneurs who are on a spiritual path, that the more that you're evolving on your spiritual path, then your purpose expands and grows, and your contribution and therefore your influence and your impact also expand the more you're doing your inner work. And obviously that's why I believe so much in coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And with the women you work with, what are those primary spiritual blocks and blind spots that you kind of see in those visionary leaders, and you help them through?
One is the imposter syndrome. So, and it's really fascinating, because you think, well, someone who's already a leader, they would have overcome that, right? Well, actually not the case, especially for women. And so everything that I'm going to talk about, it's very specific to women, because women's mindset, women's patterns of self-sabotage, they're different than men. And one of the things that happen for women, especially as they discover more of what I call actually your higher purpose or iconic work, which is the reason why you really came here to be, the imposter syndrome shows up, because you are being called to move out of all the expertise that are on your resume
Mm.
and
Yeah.
all the letters behind your name and all the certifications and all the, I have a lot of those. I was really good at doing that. You have to move out of that, which gives you credibility, and moving into a new paradigm of success, operating from what I call the feminine flow, which is completely different. And the main compass for the feminine flow, and out of all that doing and the exhaustion and the burnout and the hamster wheel, is making your decisions actually from your intuition. And there's different levels of doing that. And it can be really scary to trust at first. And that's why the imposter syndrome comes up, because as they start saying yes, they start to get downloads about ideas, about things that, and they feel like they're making it up. Or who am I to talk about this? I didn't go get a master's to teach this model of leadership or to teach this
Yeah.
business model, right? And they don't trust that it's actually coming from a higher source, what I call the universal mind, God, source, spirit, whatever you want to name it. It's way bigger than our limited little mind that is led by the ego.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've got a couple of women that I've worked with recently that have MBAs, and are, you know, it's a real struggle to just sort of walk away from all of that, you know, to just sort of leave it all behind and go on this new path. And you know, one of the things that I sort of, you know, talk to them about it and share is that your life experience brings you to where you are, right? And so many things that I've learned. So I mean, I was a general manager, right, in my past life. You know,
Yeah,
before this,
yeah.
was a general manager, worked in fashion, worked in jewelry industry, and so many things that I learned there, right, still are not a part of really what I teach and what I coach on, but are skills that I still call on, right? It's life experience. It's all of that is your life experience, and it's all leading you down a path. But you know, and this really comes back to that whole following your purpose. Just because you've been trained in something, just because you've studied in something, be brave enough to walk away from it and realize that that's taken you to where you are, but there's a whole new world, there's a whole new level when you trust that guidance, right? And often the guidance doesn't make sense, often the intuitive hits don't make sense,
Well,
and that's
most of the time it doesn't. And that's the thing, that when it doesn't make sense, that's when it's harder to follow it.
yeah,
And this is a
definitely.
key piece to talk about. You know, me trained as an architect, I was trained to control and map out all the details,
Yeah.
right? So I really had to do a lot of unlearning, what I
Yes.
call deprogramming as
Mm.
well. Because when the guidance doesn't make sense, how do you say yes when you're not given a roadmap to follow? You're not given a blueprint. But it's actually in you saying yes that all of a sudden the blueprint appears, the people to help you, the opportunities, everything starts to show up.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different way of living and of running a business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very much everything I talk about and everything I'm aligned with. Because, like I said, myself and my clients came from, and obviously you as well, came from backgrounds where everything was systems and processes and controlling things, and you know, whether it was forecasting, and just it was all about control, 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 control. And so taking a step back and letting your intuitive guidance lead the way, planning less, you know, just trusting more. It's a very challenging things to do. I get it. There's still things that I from time to time struggle with, and have to, you know, do that inner work to shift how you're feeling, shift how you're focusing, so that you can really follow that intuitive guidance.
Yeah, and also shift who you're being,
Yes.
because that's part of what we've been trained is in the doing and the metrics and the goals and the achievements, everything that you
Yeah.
just said, versus this is truly a new way of being, that when you start to master it, you see how life flows so much more effortlessly and in such a beautiful way, because you start to see that there's a magic, an energetic world of magic where everything really starts to happen.
Yes. Yeah. And that's often one of the trickiest things for people to get their head around, right? It's really, really challenging to kind of to unlearn everything that you've learned. But it's absolutely, it's absolutely the way. And so many women are seeking that, right? So many women are seeking that. They're sick of, even the women that I coach, that are coaches that have sort of momentum and success in their businesses, exactly like you're talking about, get to a point where they can't go any further because they're overworked. They're still doing things in a very masculine way. It's a strategy, it's overworking. And the only way forward is to be able to release some of that and trust the intuitive guidance that comes through, right? To align with that next level, to be that next person. Absolutely. We just talked about, it just cut out there for a second, but we just were talking about some of the blocks. So are there any other blind spots or blocks that you really see are stopping those visionary leaders, those thought leaders?
Yes. So another typical one is the I'm not good enough. And you would be surprised, Susan, that it doesn't matter what level of financial success, this still shows up.
My God, you think you'd get over it, wouldn't you?
Right. It's so interesting that it keeps on showing up. And the reason why I know it still shows up is because in my particular case, where I'm working with these very powerful women, they've done a lot of the mindset work. They've hired, mindset coaches, business coaches. They've done the strategy, all those things, and they find themselves hitting the same glass ceilings. So if you're finding yourself hitting the same glass ceiling and you've done all that inner work, and it's popping up, if you start to look at, well, really, what is the belief around this, right? And you can kind of get a sense. Of course, we all have blind spots, but you can kind of get an umbrella theme of what's showing up for you. If it's showing up again, then you know that you need to go deeper and do energetic work. And that's how I discovered this myself in my business, after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaching and making a lot of progress, but then hitting those ceilings. I thought, wait, hold on. Let me put the pause button here for a second. Something is going on, and let me look at it through the eyes of energy, not just mindset and not just strategy. And I started to uncover that there's patterns of self-sabotage that need to be cleared on an energetic level. It's not just mindset, or maybe it could be that the mindset that you've been trained in also has its own limitations, right? So you need to be looking at both things. What is this level of mindset? I'm a big, profound follower and teacher of what I call the fifth dimensional mindset, or quantum mindset. And also, what do we need to clear on an energetic level that might be actually an ancestral pattern that runs in your family, for example? And if we don't clear it several generations back through very specific methods of clearing on an energetic level, you can know for sure that that's why it's showing up again. I'm not good enough. Even you thought you did all the work around it, and you're like, why is this showing up again?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. How do you help them clear those blocks from generations past? What
Yeah,
sort of
so I've part of what happened when I went through that car accident and near-death experience is I became clairvoyant. And so I've developed a system now where I'm able to, with a client, directly laser in and see, well, no, this is an ancestral pattern, or this is something that is running in the scenes, behind the scenes, because it's a past life pattern. And there's several different places that need to be looked at, that obviously for someone who's on a spiritual path understands that there's a lot more than just what's going on in this moment, in this existence. And they find incredible results by that type of clearing, because it immediately goes away. And examples are like making massive sales right after, when there was a stoppage in the business, right?
Yeah. So powerful. So powerful. And so, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, is once people have worked on their mindset, how do you sort of take them to that next level? So, and one of the things you talked about is those quantum energy shifts and DNA upgrades. So is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, so there's two parts of it, actually. In terms of mindset, I like to call it the third dimensional mindset versus the fifth dimensional mindset or quantum mindset, right? So third dimensional mindset is basically only what our mind can conceive. It's also referred to as man-made law. That implies limitation. There's only so much money around for everyone. Everything is limited. And we've seen, especially now, a lot of this is coming up to the surface and why there's a lot of fear and uncertainty at this time, right? Because of that limitation, that superimposed false limitation, let's call it that, versus a quantum mindset where you start to tap into universal law. So there's several different universal laws that, and one of the main teachings, if we're talking about lack, for example, financial lack or abundance, is that it's actually completely limitless. And so if you're a coach, for example, wanting to raise your rates, typically I did a blog post around this today. The main thing that I see for coaches when they're wanting to raise their rates is that they're actually superimposing their limiting mindset onto the prospect, right? They're projecting how much money that person has. They're trying to get into their bank account, what their belief system is around how they spend money or invest their money, right?
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the prospect. That is completely about you. When you start to move into universal law and understand the way the universe really works in terms of abundance and limitlessness, then you stop projecting your own limiting belief systems and you move into this mindset of anything and everything is available to you. Anything and everything is possible as long as you're shifting your vibration and the way you think and therefore show up in the world.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we will all, it's such a when people look at their rates sort of in a completely different way, right? They measure against other people, they measure against what other people are charging, they think about what their prospects can afford. But whenever you raise your rates, you're calling in a new level of client too, right? You're calling in a new level of client. And one of the things I talk about too is what people invest in is also that shows their level of commitment.
Mm-hmm. So I so believe in what you said. You're calling in a new level of client, a new level of commitment, and it also calls you to up level the way you serve.
Yes.
Because they receive it when they're committed at a higher investment, what they receive and the transformation and the speed of that transformation is completely changed.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the piece about the mindset, to answer your question. The piece about the DNA upgrades, this is the other really important piece that I discovered in the method that I created. And it's that we've all heard about the 2 strands of DNA that we have, and that we're actually only using about 5% of that potential. And the rest scientists have called junk DNA. Recently, it's starting to come up that it's actually not junk DNA. Obviously, makes sense that it wouldn't be. There's a higher mind creating us in perfection.
Yeah, and just put in some junk DNA for no reason.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that in addition to the 2 traditional strands of DNA, we actually have 10 additional strands of etheric DNA. Wow. That hold all of the information about your purpose, about all of who you are in your greatness. So I use this resemblance of a rose. Like a rose just blooms in all its glory, its beauty, its scent, and it doesn't have to think about what it has to do. It's a rose, right? Well, when we activate all of our strands of DNA, we're also stepping into our fullest potential. Just like the rose, it's living as existence in its fullest potential, right? Oh. So there's these strands of DNA that when you activate them, you're actually activating every part of you, and it starts to show up everywhere. It starts to show up in your bank account, in being so clear about what you're here to do that your messaging and your marketing changes. It starts to show up in how you're influencing and impacting, because I'm sure that your listeners, just like all the women that I talk to, the reason why they got out of corporate, or the reason why they're shifting from one business into another business, is because they want to have a lot more fulfillment, and they want to have an impact. They want to change the world on some level, and that's what they're passionate about, and that's why they're doing this. And so with those DNA upgrades, all of that is amplified and powered up, basically.
Amazing. How do you do that? What is that magic? Tell me that magic.
Well, I mean, there's some simple steps that somebody can take to start to activate their strands of DNA. And then what typically happens is there's a stalling point, because again, you can only upgrade. It's kind of like upgrading your computer system. You have to clean up the old system and take it out before completely upgrading to the new system, right? So part of beginning to activate your strands of DNA is actually commanding it. And this is so powerful, because as women, we forgot. We are always, like you said, when you're wanting to raise your rates, you're looking at the outside, or you're wanting to create a program and you're doing that comparison, and that immediately puts the power outside of you. So I use the word command very specifically because that brings all the power to you. You have the power to command, simply saying, I command the activation of my 12 strands of DNA. Another piece is actually calling back your power. So when you start to see programs of self-sabotage, anyone who's doing coaching, they're already doing that work. And each time you have a program of self-sabotage, you actually left part of you with it. You actually left part of your power there. And so when you're changing your belief system, it's really important not just to change the belief system and the actions that go with the new belief system, but actually to consciously command, I call back my power that I left with that limiting belief system that was running my life at that time. And as you call back your power, those pieces that you left away, it's also a very powerful piece for activating the strands of DNA. So I think those are two of the most powerful steps someone can use to begin to do this on their own.
Wow, powerful. I love that. It sounds so exciting. And one of the things we sort of touched on earlier was that we still live in a man's world, essentially, right? We still live in a man's world. And so how do you help women thrive and really activate their feminine leadership powers?
Well, first of all, it's part of the conversation that we've had, and it's this recognition of the patterns that you've been running that are masculine and that create problems in your life and your business, right? So the overdoing, the reaching one goal, and instead of stopping and being in a space of gratitude, which is the currency of the universe, what I typically see is, I achieved this mega goal. Now let me reach, the next goal, right? And also understanding that the masculine way, all the decisions come from the head. You're not using that intuition as your guidance system, as your compass, like we were talking about. So first you have to start to identify that we are programmed around how fast we can grow, how much abundance we can create, and also we're programmed with this idea, this false idea that growth comes with sacrifice.
Oh yes, that's just it's one thing I'm very, very passionate about, helping women let go of. Absolutely.
And so women that are aware of that, they realize, okay, I need to do the inner work. Let me work with, let me hire a coach. Or also because, they've made those sacrifices that I talked about. Maybe they had a body breakdown like I did a few years ago. You hear about adrenal fatigue and thyroid problems and fertility issues and loss of libido and insomnia. These are typical exhaustion. These are all the sacrifices. Dysfunctional marriages. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many of those come up as well, right? So that's all because of the pushing. That's all part of the masculine paradigm of the pushing, the forcing, the controlling. So we've been taught that paradigm. So we need to, like I said, number one, identify that paradigm, start to make the course corrections, the deleting of those programs, what we talked about on all levels, not just mind, but energy level as well. And then you can bring in the new program. The new program of women are designed to excel in flow. Women are designed to excel by using their intuition, their internal guidance. Women are also designed to excel in pleasure. So
Yeah.
what gives you a lot of pleasure and a lot of joy is where you're meant to go. But what's happening again is women are looking at the outside models of success and let me do it this way, even though I'm hating the process. And immediately you got out of your own feminine flow. So part of the teaching is how to let go of looking at the outside and really starting to tap in what brings you pleasure, what turns you on, what lights you up, and where do you perform best?
Yes, I love that. That's one of the things I always talk about women with in the start. One of the first things we dive into is what are all these things that you feel like you should be doing for business to
Oh, yeah, the
succeed,
shoulds. Oh my God,
right?
those are
Write
so
them all
big.
down, get a match, burn it, just let it all go. Tapping back into what you feel called to do. What is it that you feel called to do? What are the things you love doing? Do more of that, right? Because that's the energy. This is activating your purpose. That's calling in what you want. So often I see so many people get stuck in, and this is one of the tricky things with strategies is that people get stuck in what they feel they should be doing. Someone else told them that they have to follow this strategy, and so now I have to show up every day and I have to do all these things that I really don't want to do. And it's an energetic block. It's keeping them stuck in that masculine energy.
And it immediately lowers their vibration. We haven't even talked about vibration yet. When you're doing what you think you should do and you are not loving it, you are immediately in an energy of resentment, boredom,
Yep.
sometimes anger,
Yep.
frustration. And we're like a tuning rod, right? Like a radio station. And whatever you're vibrating at, you will call the same experience magnetically into your life. So if you're not happy about what's showing up, you need to be looking at first, like, how are you vibrating? Because you need to immediately change that so that you change your results.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I always say, like, it's not the action you take, it's your energy behind it, it's your intention, it's that vibration piece that is everything. That is everything. And I can never stress that enough with people. It's people like, yep, but what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I, like, yeah, I get it's all about vibes, but it's not that it's just about being high vibe, but it's cleaning up your energy, right? It's just really listening to that truth of who you are and what you're feeling called to do. That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah.
Doing things
And I
that
had
bring
a
you
whole,
pleasure, bring you joy.
yeah, I have a whole chapter in my book and I call it changing your spirit to a spiritual operating system. And I talk about the shoulds being the guiding force, and the new spiritual operating system upgrade is leading from desire and inspiration, because the shoulds that we're talking about is part of this whole ingrained programming that we're in based on guilt and shame, right? So you feel guilty if you don't do what you think you should do,
Yes.
versus the desire and inspiration moves you into a whole different, not just business paradigm, but life paradigm,
Yeah.
because you are in joy.
Yes. Yeah. And absolutely, I think there's the thing too with female entrepreneurs is that it's, when we do all of this work, it's not just about your business. Obviously, it's about your life, right? It's about how you're living, and it changes everything. It changes the way you look at, your health and relationships, just, abundance, finances, everything. It shifts everything in your life, which is what I love. It's just like being a female entrepreneur is like the biggest personal development journey ever, right?
Right. It is. I think I was having this conversation in our team meeting this morning. And we were talking about the traditional guru is going to be replaced by running your business is your biggest guru.
Mm.
Because it shows you everything that you need to clean up, everything that you need to awaken, all the false belief systems and the new identity that you must create, and how to empower yourself to show up in the world and have the life experiences that you feel so deeply in your heart that you are meant to live.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And is there anything else you would like to share with the listeners or add? The other word of wisdom.
Let's see if anything comes through right now. Give me a second. Yeah, so I truly believe that it is the time for women and female energy to lead the way, because there are men out there that are really in support of more of the feminine masculine balance, right? Because we've been living an imbalance for a very long time, and this is how it's showing up, and we see it. And women suffer it very much because they're the ones having the body breakdowns and making the sacrifices and trying to be superwoman along the way. We haven't even talked about that today. And so really it's the time for women to lead, but to lead from a very different place, right? To lead from that intuition and to unapologetically lead from a new belief system that lifts you up and empowers you instead of bringing you down, like the shoulds, like the shame and the guilt, right? So I think that is a key piece, because especially right now, so many women are feeling called to make a really profound change in the world.
Yeah.
And going back to the whole theme of purpose that came up several times during our conversation, only you can do what you do the way that you do it. So in that limited 3D thinking that I brought up earlier, there's a whole concept of competition. And
Yeah.
let me check out what the competition is doing. Well, in truth, if you think that nobody can do what you do the way that you do it, there is no competition. You will attract to you the exact people that need you,
Mm.
because only you have the life experiences that you have, the unique divine blueprint that you have. And so the more that you can step into the truth and uncover the truth of who you are, then the more successful you will be. And I'm not just talking about financial success. I'm talking about success with freedom, with play, with joy, with purpose, a very different playing field.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's so true. And I see that a lot with new coaches that I talk to, that they're very much in comparison mode. But it's your life experience that brought you to where you are, and you can't replicate that. You can't replicate that. Even if we're teaching similar things, helping people with similar things, we all bring our own uniqueness to that, our own life experience, just our own unique way of doing it, our own unique energy, and people are going to resonate with different people. So there's
Yeah.
never any competition. But I also love that in this space too, there's a huge movement to support, for women to come together, to support each other, to love each other, to raise each other up. It's, there's a lot of women out there celebrating each other's successes too, not sort of competing or tearing each other down, but celebrating each other, supporting each other.
Yes. So, and it's really about, again, because that's the old model of competition and comparison versus let me help other queens. If you feel a queen inside of yourself, you will help other queens build your queendom. If you're in comparison, competition mode, you're actually in a very low vibration of let me keep this all for me,
Mm-hmm.
instead of let me support other people out there, because at the end of the day we're in all this together, and that it's just another way to step into your power unapologetically and to be a true leader, to be a true visionary. That is the path.
Yeah, I love that. So beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful chatting to you today. And I mean, I love everything you talk about. It's so aligned with everything I already talk about, but it's beautiful to get a different perspective and to hear your voice on all of this. So thank you so much for sharing with everyone today.
Oh, thank you, Susan. I really appreciate it.